this is not going to be like a be all end all. Once again, this is just the things that I look for when I am planning shots, when I'm trying to brainstorm and come up with like the best idea that I can possibly get. So the concept here is planning a new shot. How do we do it? How do we plan a shot, get the best out of it? Well, we have to come up with an idea. And that seems simple. You think about it, it's coming up with an idea. Yeah, I can come up with ideas. It's simple, easy. And then you actually try to do it. And my God, is it horrible? It's horrible trying to come up with an idea for a shot. Whether it's a body mechanic shot, whether it's a pantomime shot, whether it's an acting shot, and you have to find dialogue on top of coming up with the idea. It's hard. It really is. And the worst part is, it's always the hardest when you have to do it. If you don't have any assignments to do, if you don't have a shot like in the works, and you're just kind of sitting there working on a current shot, you're going to have ideas galore. It's going to be, ooh, my next shot could be this. Oh, my next shot could be that. Oh my God, the next shot's going to be this amazing thing. Like, oh man, when I get to it in the next 3 weeks, oh, next term, I'm going to be ready. And then the moment that it comes down to actually planning and, okay, where are all the ideas? What was the cool idea I had before? It's gone. Poof. Not there anymore. And you're trying, the deadline's coming closer, and it's like, oh, I just want one idea that works. That happens all the time. And I remember when I was a student, that period of assignments, whenever I would have to come up with an idea, was one of the hardest for me. Not just in terms of assignments, but in terms of mental health, because I kept putting myself down. I kept thinking, I can't be an animator if I can't even come up with one stupid idea. How can I make a career out of this if I'm stopped at, like, I haven't even started animating it. I'm like at the starting line and I've tripped and fallen over. So how do you do this? Well, the big thing is, one, understanding that it's normal to have trouble coming up with ideas. That's just human nature. When we are put on the spot and we have all of these things that we can do, and like you have a pantomime shot, for example, you have the world of possibilities. It's this blank canvas here. When we are given a blank canvas, it is very hard to fill it because we can do anything. We could do whatever we want. This could be a character climbing a mountain. It could be a character in a submarine at the bottom of the ocean. It could be a character in space. It could be a character in their home. It could be... We have so many possibilities, like, and that's just locations. They could be doing anything. So, number one, when you're starting to come up with ideas, is we need to limit ourselves. We need to basically give ourselves things that make this so that we don't start with a blank canvas anymore. We need to kind of close it off. And the more you kind of give limitations to yourself, the more that breeds creativity. It's the weird kind of juxtaposition that a lot of people don't realize when they start an art career, if they've never done art before, is that the more limitations you have, the more creative you can become in pushing those limitations. When you have no limitations and you can do anything, it's actually much harder to be creative because our brain just, it has nothing to bounce off of, no ideas to start from, and it's just lost. So, number one, we need to put our limits. So, when we're coming up with ideas, we need to, and here I have to work on my handwriting. I'm terrible. When I'm writing my own stuff, I just like squiggle things. It's terrible. And then I start streaming and doing a demo. It's like, oh wait, I have to think of my handwriting. Can't just squiggle things anymore. So, number one, limits. Think of your limits and how you can push them and what we can do with them. So, what are limits? What kind of limits do we have? Well, a few big ones are, what's the frame limit? So I'm not going to write the whole thing. So frame limit. That's an important one and a good one to start with, because when you're at a studio, you're going to be given frame limits. And for some reason, it's gotten really hot today, so I'm going to take off my jacket. It started off really cold this morning, but spring is here and the sun is shining and it's actually getting warmer, which is nice. So we've got frame limit. This is very important. When you're in a studio, you're given a frame limit. And in a studio, if they tell you your shot is 320 frames, it's 320 exactly. You don't get to go 20 more or less. No, it's that. So in a shot that you're given in an assignment, you're usually given a range. Let's say it's 100 to 200 frames. Okay, good. That gives me an idea of how long I should do this shot for. Now, a note on frame limits is always aim for the lowest you can. Always, always, always. And it's hard. It's tempting to go, oh, I've got 200 frames I can play with. I'm going to play with every single one. Go with the lowest. It seems like it's limiting, and it can be hard sometimes. And you're not always going to hit the lowest limit possible, but keep in mind a few different things. One is, when you're working on a shot, typically shots get longer the more you work on them. Your mentor will ask for a longer hold here. Something else will come up and they'll ask for maybe a little bit more at the beginning, a little bit more at the end. Shots tend to kind of get longer as we work on them, as we keep refining things. It's very rare for shots to get shorter. Very, very rare. So, by starting at the lowest limit, you give yourself that room to grow. If you start at the highest limit, right from the start, you're going to reach a point in your shots where the mentor is going to go, oh, you need more time here. But you're at the limit. You can't go any longer, which means that you either have to start cutting bits of your other sections of the shot, or like just try to make it work, or it just doesn't work in the end. So going with the high is a good recipe for shooting yourself in the foot later on, essentially. The other thing is, the shorter the shot, the more time you have to polish things and make mistakes. Think about it. Like if we have a frame limit of 100 to 200 frames, that's half the length. So if I go for a 200 frame shot right here, that would be like animating 2 of these shots at the same time. I'm doing twice the amount of work, which means that I have to do twice the amount of blocking, twice the amount of splining, twice the amount of polishing, twice the amount of lip sync, twice the amount of body mechanics, all of that for the same shot. That means you have half the amount of time to polish, half the amount of time to block out, half the amount of time to do anything. And that means less time to make mistakes, less time to redo work, less time to learn. And especially if this is an assignment, if you're in a school, whether it's Animation Mentor, Anim School, whatever, the whole point of being in a school is to make mistakes and have someone correct you. It might seem like, no, the whole point of being in a school is to pass and to succeed. Yes, technically, in a way, you want to pass your class. But the whole reason you're learning in a class environment is so that you can make a mistake, the mentor can correct you, and you fix it and you make it better and you learn from it. That's the goal of being in school. If you're not doing that, why do you have to be in school? If you're always succeeding, you should just be working in the industry already. You're students at this point. I was a student at that point. We are supposed to make mistakes. And by going to that high frame limit, you are cutting into that time to make mistakes and learn from them. So stick with the lower limit as much as you can. Sometimes you're going to have an idea where it's like, I can't keep it short. I can't keep it at the lowest. As much as you can, keep it at the absolute shortest you can. Okay. Now, that's the first limit, the frame limit, and probably one of the most important. Now, other limits, like people mentioned in the chat here, number of characters. How many characters do you need in your shot? Is it 1? Is it 2? Are you supposed to be doing 3 character shots? Does your shot have dialogue, or is it a silent shot? Those are very important things. What rigs do you have access to? So rigs. Like, do you have a character with full facial controls? Do you have a character that only has 3 controls or 3 fingers? Do you have access to a creature rig? Like, what rigs do you have access to, and what rigs are you supposed to be using for this? That's going to influence many things. If you have a character with no facial controls, you can't do a lot of facial expressions. You have to do it all in the body. So that's a limit. We just write all of this down. Character interaction, exactly. Is this shot supposed to have character interaction, or is it supposed to avoid? Props. Are you allowed to use them or not? Another limit could be, what does the mentor want you to focus on? So we need to think of our limits, and I'm not writing these down because it's just any limits. It could be, another limit would be camera angles. Should your camera be a full body camera? This is usually a body mechanics test. Your limit is that you can't do a close-up. So for example, if I'm doing a whole body mechanics test, I can't do a close-up of my character like this, nice and close, because I'm not seeing any body. And especially if I have a character with no facial controls, what's a close-up like this going to give me? Nothing. There's no body mechanics whatsoever. So I need a full body shot. I need to have the camera further out. So we need to put these limits, figure out all of them, write them all down. And when I was a student, I would just make a page of just all my limits and everything that I needed to keep track of. So that's number 1. Know your limits. Number 1. And probably the most important things to start with. The other thing, actually a good limit, is time. How much time do you have to work on these shots? Is it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? If you only have a week to work on something, you definitely need to keep it simple. If you have 2 or 3 weeks, well, you can go a little bit more complex. So you need to know all of this. And when you're at a studio, this is very important, because if you're given a shot and the deadline is 2 weeks, you've got to plan your shot appropriately to get it all done in that time. I can't be wasting time doing extra stuff if I've got to get this 100% polished and done in the next week or 2. So we need to know our time on the shot. Now, how do you define the line between doing something simple and not learning so much from it, but also trying to do something complicated to learn from and failing so miserably? That's actually a good question. Actually, kind of the next thing on the limit here, or on the list here that I have. So number 1 is limits. Number 2, we'll kind of go into this next question, is remember KISS. Keep it simple. And then the last one is usually stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. Or some people say keep it simple, silly. Keep it simple, or keep it super simple. Whatever it is, honestly, it breaks down to keep it simple. When you're coming up with shot ideas, we want to keep things simple. Now, how do we avoid keeping it so simple that something is boring, but not going so complex that we are learning nothing and that we are shooting ourselves in the foot by not being able to keep up with it? And honestly, that is a very tough thing, because no one has the same answer. Everyone is different. Something that is complex for one person might not be complex for another. So it's understanding your own skills. You have to be very aware of your own skills and have the ability to self-reflect, to be able to look at your own work and go, okay, what am I struggling with? What do I need to focus on? What can I do to improve myself and the things that I'm weakest at, without pushing myself to an extreme? And this is hard, especially when you're first starting. And this is where you can talk to your mentor. So for example, this is the start of a new term. You've probably uploaded your progress reel. You could message your mentor, or if you have a class with your mentor, ask them, where do you struggle with? Like, ask your mentor, what do I struggle with? What do I need to focus on this term? And they'll let you know. Your body mechanics need more work. You need to push more character in your character. You need to work on your timing or your spacing. And then you could use that as a guide. If you don't have that, you can do that self-reflection or ask some friends. Especially if you're an animation mentor, there's a whole campus. Feel free to ask people, what do I need to focus on? What are the top 3 things that I need to focus on to make myself better, to improve my weaknesses? So part of keeping it simple is know your limits. Or let's try to use a different term because we have limits here. Know your weaknesses. My terrible handwriting, I apologize. Yeah. Know your weakness or weaknesses. You want to be able to approach that and know what you need to fix. If you don't know what you need to fix, if you don't know what you need to improve with your own work, with yourself as an animator, how can you properly grow? And how can you avoid things that are way too complex? So for example, if one of my weaknesses is constraints, I have no idea how to use them and I have no idea what they're there for, I shouldn't do a shot that's going to involve very complex constraints and that rely on constraints. If I do not know how to use constraints, I can learn how to use constraints, but maybe do it in a simple, easy way of character just holding something, but no interactions really. They're just holding something. Or maybe you just put a hat on the character's head and you just learn how to do that first. Don't have a character like juggling and doing this big complex thing where they're then juggling and then balancing on the balls that they're juggling and doing this whole complex thing and then throwing the ball and it has to stick to a wall before something else happens. And no. Pick something simple. So we need to know our weaknesses. The other thing that we need to know is how to put this. So you need to know your weaknesses. You also need to know your strengths. And the reason we need to know our strengths is so that we can use them. We can apply them in a way that makes it easier for ourselves. Now, when you're starting out, this is going to be tough because I remember being a student and I had no strengths. My strength was planning. Right from the start, I was usually really good at planning a shot. It was drilled into me right from the start, and I really put a lot of work into planning. But animation-wise, I didn't have a ton of strengths. Now, this is where, as animators and just as artists, we're usually very critical of ourselves. So strengths are harder to find, at least for me. I have a hard time seeing my own strengths. Talk to other people. Ask them, look, what am I good at? Like, what areas in my animation? This is not like self-flatter me. Like, tell me, what am I best at? What are my best qualities? Oh, yes, please. Flatter me some more. Give me compliments. No, we're not doing that. What we're looking for is, tell me what areas I am succeeding at. What areas do you feel I have a good understanding at this point? The reason this is important is now we know areas that we can either try to refine even more and dive into deeper, or areas that maybe this term I'm going to step away from a little bit. Now, if it's an animation principle, your timing's great. You're not going to step away from timing because it has to be in every single shot. But let's say this is more like shot ideas in general. You have a really good understanding of having a character move around, of intense physicality, maybe parkour style shots. Great. Am I going to do another parkour style shot? Why? If I've got a good understanding of that already, I should try to focus on something else. Now, if I have a weakness in that, my physicality is not the greatest when I'm doing these complex motions. Well, maybe I'm not going to do another parkour style shot, but I'll do something similar. Maybe it's not parkour, but maybe it's going to be dancing, or maybe it's going to be some sort of what I'm just trying to think of complex shots, like a Ninja Warrior style shot, where it's not parkour, but kind of similar, climbing, whatnot. Something else that can help me push those in there. So knowing your strengths, not as helpful as knowing your weaknesses, but still useful. And we can use that to just kind of figure out what we can avoid or what we can kind of use as a basis. So an example for that for me is one of my strengths when I was a student was I actually knew how to do constraints fairly well. I had used Maya in the past and I knew how to do constraints. So I was confident that if my shot had constraints, I could do it and I could pull it off. So that kind of removed that limit for me. I didn't have to go, oh shoot, one of my weaknesses is constraints. I should avoid that. I knew I could do it and I could succeed with it. So it gives you an idea of what you can be confident with. Or sometimes you'll go into a shot and go, oh God, my constraints in this shot, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And then you can kind of learn a little bit more about it. So knowing that. Now, keeping it simple. The other thing is going to be knowing the goal of the shot. So this kind of goes into limits. It goes into keep it simple. It's kind of its own thing. What is the goal of the shot? Now, what does that mean? The goal of the shot is what's the end result supposed to be? And this can be many things. As an assignment, the goal is to learn from it. That's kind of the big, learn. We want to learn something from this. If we're just doing something that we've done before, we're not learning something new. We need to push ourselves forward and learn something from it. Okay, great. But we also have smaller goals. Is this goal going to be for our demo reel? Well, if this shot is supposed to be on our demo reel, we have to be a little bit more selective of our ideas, and we need to kind of push them a little bit more. We want to be more creative. We want to make something that's a little bit more dynamic, more interesting, because recruiters are going to look at this. This is going to be something for kind of job hunting. But keep in mind that most shots are not going to be there. So, for example, if you're in Animation Mentor, if you're in class 1, 2, or 3, your shots are not going to go on a demo reel. Very, very rarely will a shot from 1, 2, or 3 end up on a demo reel. That's just the truth of it. The big reason? By the time you're done class 6, you're going to look back at your class 1, 2, and 3 work and go, oh my God, I did that? Hide it in a vault and let no one see it. You're going to get so much better. You're going to look at those old shots and it's just not going to be worth putting on a demo reel. It's going to not show your current skill level. Instead, it would be better and you'll probably be faster at animating a similar shot, and it'll be better. It's going to take less time and it's just going to be more awesome. So when you're in those early classes, that goal is really just to learn, which means don't worry about coming up with these crazy ideas that are unique and that no one's ever seen and that's going to be something that you can show a recruiter and all of that. No. The goal is to learn. As long as you do something you learn about, if the idea is boring and cliche, who cares? You learned something from it. That's the goal. So, to answer the question here, what classes do you start focusing on demo reel shots? Usually class 4. That's when you're going to start thinking of your shots in demo reel quality. If your skills in body mechanics, if you've got a really good understanding of body mechanics, usually like middle of class 3, or if you really got some previous experience, class 3, you can start thinking of demo reel stuff. But for most people, it's maybe end of class 3, class 4, 5, and 6. So that is going to help kind of narrow things down. Now, on this note here, I personally feel like having a fun story to tell really motivates me on a shot though. Yes, so this is actually a separate thing. So a shot can be cliche and kind of, for lack of a better term, not visually interesting. But we always want to come up with a good story because, like you said, it makes it easier to work on. It actually makes it more motivating. And this is going to go into another element that we'll go into in just a second. But just think about it this way. If I have a character that's going to take a sip of water, because I should actually take a sip of water here too. It's my excuse. So I'm going to take a sip of water. That's the action. That's the shot. Great. I could keep it that very basic. I'm going to learn from that and just use that as my goal. Done. Okay. Was that interesting? Was that fun to look at? Was that something that I would be motivated and having fun to animate? No. Character is sitting there, sips of water, and then done. I technically did what I was aiming for, but it lacks life. We don't want that. When I'm talking about keeping something simple and not putting it on a demo reel, is that we don't have to try and make the be-all, end-all shot. This does not have to be the most epic, the most creative. If we have to settle on an idea, that's fine. That's totally fine. As long as you're having fun with it and you're learning from it, that's the important bit. Later on, we can start focusing on more on getting the right camera angle, getting every little bit tied in there. So instead, like for that drinking shot, maybe we want the character to be, again, just think of a story, a fun story to describe this character. Maybe it's someone who's like working really hard and animating all day and they have to take a sip of water, but they don't want to lose track. So they're just like drinking out of the side of their mouth and or they're working and maybe they're talking as they're like talking to someone. Hey, how's it going? And they're trying to drink some water and they're doing it and leave, and then they're still working. So now you've got the same thing, drinking water, but there's a story behind it. And that was not the best example of that, as I'm trying to look at my screen, look at my camera, and not spill water all over my keyboard. But we try to figure out how can we make this interesting to look at and fun for us. But don't put that stress of it needs to be perfect. It needs to be a demo reel. It needs to be like you look at shots from Pixar and DreamWorks and like it has to be that level right away. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Especially when you're in class 1 and 2, that is not the time to think of demo reel stuff. That is just the time to learn. So, understanding your goals and what the goal of the shot is very, very important. So, to answer your question, in body mechanics, is it difficult to animate a character doing action movements with a shield and sword? Let me put it this way. It's very constraint specific. So if you know how to use constraints, it's actually not that hard. If you don't know how to use constraints, it can be very tricky because you have to animate it backwards. With a sword, typically, you don't want to animate the hand. You want to animate the sword. It's going to be a very short little sword here. I would actually pull up one of my actual swords that I have, but I found out that I actually can't show swords on Twitch, unfortunately. Dang it. So, oh no, I have to make do. So you would want to have the sword lead the action and the hand follow along. So you're actually animating the sword through the whole shot and the hand just follows. And then you would want to make sure you have a constraint setup that allows you to adjust the hand over top of the sword so that it's not just glued on there. Same with the shield. So is it difficult? It depends on your understanding of constraints and how to use them. If you feel like you've got a good sense of body mechanics and you want to learn constraints and kind of learn that, great. If you're struggling with body mechanics, I would avoid trying to do something that relies so heavily on constraints and instead do something a little simpler, where a character might have just a ball in their hand. Maybe they're playing baseball and they've just got like something like this in their hand. It still makes you work with constraints, but it's not so important to have every single arc of that sword working correctly. So it gives you a little bit more leeway. The larger the object, especially something long like a sword or a spear, the more you have to be very specific and what's the right word I'm looking for? Very controlled about how it works. So hopefully that answers the question there. Okay, so coming up with an idea is essentially we need to know our limits. We need to keep things simple. This applies even when you're in a studio. When you're given a shot, the biggest thing that you want to do is keep shots simple. Now, once again, keeping it simple doesn't mean keeping it boring. It just means not putting 110 things into the shot just to make it more interesting. The more motion we have, the more cool things we have, the more it's going to be awesome. No, it just gets messy. You want to keep it to a few core concepts. Know the goal of the shot. What does the director want you to focus on? If it's a body mechanic shot, that's the goal of the shot. You need to focus on body mechanics. Adding extra things that are not body mechanics is not going to be super helpful. So we want to simplify things as much as possible. Not so simple as boring. That's something I struggled with when I was in class 2 especially. Class 3. I had a big problem where my mentor kept telling me, like, your shots are a little boring. Like, make them more. Do more with them. I kept simplifying it down too much. But those are some very important elements there. Now, we had talked about not starting from a blank canvas. And actually, Blue Shell, yes, I did miss your question there. Thanks for reposting. Just a general note, if ever I miss a question, feel free to repost it. I try to keep an eye on the chat, but sometimes I get distracted. So, I wanted to ask a question about dialogue options. Is it okay to use in-game dialogue when characters are standing idle talking? Because it isn't like someone has animated to the dialogue, like Batman dialogue with a goon from the Arkham games. Yeah, it's iffy, simply because some people might recognize it from that game and still create that association. So one of the reasons why we want to avoid dialogue from games or cartoons is we don't want our animation being associated with another one. In the sense of, if a recruiter is looking at our shot and go, oh, I recognize that line is from Toy Story. Let me compare your shot to Toy Story. Usually when that happens, our shots don't win out because, well, there's either an emotional attachment or like we're competing against Pixar or Disney or something like that. So we want to avoid that. Even if it's not a one-to-one, that dialogue, for example, is just a goon off in the distance and there's technically no animation for it. If it's very easily recognizable, which you'd be surprised how often people can recognize things, it can still create that association. An example of this is taking clips of dialogue from... Well, there's two cases for this. Taking dialogue or clips that are from deleted segments of cartoons. So maybe there's a dialogue from, let's say, Turning Red, since it just came out, but it was never used in the final film. It's just kind of a behind the scenes dialogue clip of the character, and it was never used in the film. It was never shown in the film. It's just something you found on YouTube. That is, you could technically use. There's nothing wrong with using it, but because those characters' voices, they are talking and inflecting in the same way that they do in the cartoon, you can still create that association. And kind of the second part of that is voice actors we have to be very careful of, or just actors in general. There are some actors that are so recognizable that regardless of what you take them from, it can be associated with a certain cartoon. A good example of that is Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is the voice of Woody, but he's also in a ton of movies with great dialogue. You've got Saving Private Ryan, you've got Castaway, you've got... I'm not going to name them all because I'd be here all day. You've got tons of films that he's worked on. But if we take dialogue from there and animate it, oftentimes people will go, oh, it's the voice of Woody, because we're hearing his voice and seeing an animated something. So the short answer is it depends. If it's totally unrecognizable, if it has nothing to do with the main Batman character, yeah, it wouldn't be terrible to do that. But we always have to be careful. And we always have to kind of, like, I don't want to say second guess ourselves, but we don't want to lean too much into that if we can avoid it. I hope that answers your question. It's really just being careful. The last thing we want is for a recruiter or someone to compare, because those comparisons are not fair. We want them to judge our animation based on our animation and not based on something else. So, yeah. So, going back into what was I saying before? And actually, if anyone else has questions on that, definitely let me know. So, yes, coming up with ideas. So we're still coming up with ideas. We've gotten our goals in place. We know our limits. We are trying to keep it simple. Great. Now, how do we come up with ideas? We still haven't answered that part, which is probably one of the hardest parts, is coming up with that dang idea in the first place. Where do we even start? We can't come up with a character. We can't come up with where we're going to put our camera. We can't come up with anything if we don't have an idea to start with. We can't even shoot our reference for it. So, the way I typically come up with ideas is, once again, avoiding the blank canvas, because we could do anything. We can do absolutely anything right now. We could have a character dancing on the moon with a Martian for some reason. Okay. Like, what do we want to do? So, for me, what I will do is I will create an idea sheet. Essentially, I will just throw out every single idea, as much as I can, of what I would like to animate or what the goal of the assignment is. So, for example, let's say you're animating a pantomime shot. We'll go with pantomime. So, pantomime, that requires body mechanics. So, we need our body mechanics in there. We also need a emotional change. Usually for a pantomime shot, we need an emotion change. Okay. So we've got body mechanics and an emotion change. Those are the goals and the limits of our shot. We need to have these in there. Now, let's say we have one character. So these are goals, limits. And I apologize for my handwriting. So one character. And I can spell. There we go. Oh, that's why I'm not using the right pen. There. It's like that R is horrible right there. Okay. So these are our goals and limits. We need to have those. And we could put more in there. Now, I'm just going to throw out different ideas. So body mechanics. What could I do? Well, this is where you just think of what would you love to do? What could you do? Just put them out there. So maybe I do a dancing shot. Ooh, that could be fun. A fighting shot. Ooh, that could be interesting. What else? I could do body mechanics, maybe parkour. Like, just write down anything. I'm going to just do a few here. And yes, Andre, this is Clip Studio, which you can find a link to there. It's a really great tool. It goes on sale like every few months, and you can usually get like 50% off. It's really, really good. So, dance, fighting, parkour, what other things? Maybe like a Korra style shot where it's like martial arts and airbending or something like that. What else? Other body mechanics things we could do? We could do something simple, maybe Cooking. Maybe just a character cooking in the kitchen. Okay. And we just come up with a whole list of different body mechanics ideas we can do. Okay, well, we need emotion changes. What emotions would be fun? We could do happy. Like, you could just write down things. Happy, sad, excited. Write down a whole bunch of emotions in there. Scared. Okay, so we've got emotion changes in there. We can also come up with just different random thoughts for this as well. So we've got different actions, we've got different emotions. Like, this is just throw out ideas. So for example, we could have maybe just the thought of like a triumphant moment, like that kind of, they've succeeded, they've won. Maybe we want to play around with the idea of success. Well, that's kind of triumph. Maybe failure. So it's not really a specific mechanic or an emotion, but it's kind of a idea of the scene. That R is bothering me. There we go. Okay. Failure. What else? Other general ideas. One that I love is the idea of, well, what was the term of it? There's a term for it, but it always escapes me. It's not just the triumphant moment. It's that moment of, I guess you could say, success under pressure. The best moment for me for that is, one of the best, is the moment in Hercules. If this is not a spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it, Disney's Hercules, the animated movie, when Hercules is trying to lift the rock to save the kids, and there's a town watching him, and everyone's just judging him, and everyone's just going, this guy, a hero, ziff. And he's trying to lift this rock, trying to help these kids, and it looks like he might not do it. And then you suddenly start to see the rock lift, and he lifts it up over his head, and everyone just has that like, oh my God, he did it. And that like, yes. And you kind of want to stand up in your chair and go, yeah, he did it. Not just because he managed to lift the rock. It's not just strength in this. It's that moment of, yeah, that kind of climax to that moment, that kind of moment of triumph. But it's not just success either. It's changing people's minds or doing something that should have been impossible. Those types of moments in film, when they're done right, really speak to me. Another good moment, and this is probably my favorite movie moment, is the end of the Rocky film. This is an old film, so spoiler warning, is Rocky Balboa fighting against Apollo Creed, boxing match, and the whole film is about no one believing in him and everyone thinking that he's just going to lose against this champion. And he's just this nobody, this person from like nowhere. And no one believes in him. They can't get anything right about him. They just don't care. Everyone's just thinking that he's going to walk into that ring, get pummeled, and then that's it. And at the end of the film, he actually loses. He loses the fight. But that doesn't matter because he managed to not get knocked out. He stood his ground for the whole fight. And the way they film it, the way they do it is, you're just so happy that he's succeeding and that he's doing it. And I remember when Cameron and I first watched it, like, we had that, like, we were at the edge of our seat. We were ready to just stand up and cheer because they had just done that so well. So it's one of those things that I love, that moment of I guess you could say it's triumph, but it's not even that. It's beating the odds. So let's put it that way. Beating the odds. Beating odds. So you put down ideas like this. Just like, oh, I really like, oh, maybe another one is like a scary moment. So this is kind of an emotion, scared, but maybe we want the shot to be scary. Not just, that relentless courage to never give up. I love that. That's a great way of describing that. Beautiful wording there. Thanks, Kyle. So maybe we want to do a scary shot. Now, a scary shot doesn't necessarily mean that the character has to be scared. An example of this is maybe someone's walking down into a haunted house and they're just like, doopy doopy doo, just walking along, just totally oblivious. And in the background, you see a door go, and it opens up and there's just this thing, whatever it is, into the background and starts creeping up on this person. And they doopy doopy doo, just ignoring, and then look back and the shadow goes, and it's gone. Oh, well, doopy doopy doo. And they keep walking, and the shadow by the end of the shot is just like right there over top of them before the shot cuts, and that's it. So it's not us, or not the character that's scared. It's us as the audience that's scared for the character. This is another concept, is we can make ideas that tell the audience something. The character doesn't always have to feel it themselves. And I'll go into that a little bit more later. But essentially, you just write all of these down. And this is a short list here. I would take some time for this. And you can also write out rigs that you want to use. So maybe I want to use the Aya rig from Animation Mentor. Maybe I want to use the horse rig. Maybe I want to use, what other rigs are there out there? The Apollo rig. The Vixen rig, which is really cool. I haven't had a chance to try that one yet, but it looks really nice. And you just write down a list of rigs. Oops. My R turned into a B. So, rigs. Write all of that down. Okay, great. We could keep going on this forever, but let's say we've got enough here. Now, what I will do is I will mix and match. Instead of just trying to come up with one idea from the recesses of my brain and go, okay, we're going to do this and make it something, I just write down a whole big just drop of whatever I like, just a mind dump, just all my ideas, put it on paper, and then mix and match. So let's say, for example, let's do a dance shot. And we're going to have, well, we need an emotion change. So we're going to have the character maybe start out sad and then become excited. Okay. And maybe it's going to be this kind of moment of triumph right there. And we're going to use the Aya rig and whatever else. Like, we'll put Jules in here. We'll use Aya and Jules, for example. So right there, that gives us somewhere to start with. Because now I am not starting from a blank. I'm starting from this core of ideas that I want to try. And now I can make something interesting. So for example, the dance, we're going from sad to excited. And it's a moment of triumph. So maybe this character is sitting on the bench and everyone, like, let's say this is a school prom. And everyone's gone to the dance. And they're just sitting there, just waiting, and no one wants to dance with them, and they've kind of given up, and they're just, maybe it's not a like true like boo-hoo kind of sad, but just that kind of like just given up on the day, and they were hoping that this day was going to be a beautiful memory, and it just didn't happen. Or maybe they're the person that they asked out is late, and it's like, guess they're not showing up. And now the person comes up and offers them the dance, or they arrive running out of breath because they're late, and offers them the dance. And then you go into that excited, like, oh yes, this is going to be a beautiful night. And they go into that dance, and there we go. that's a very basic idea, just like off the top of my head. But you can see that we can come up with that idea off the top of our head now, because we can start with these things and we can just change up the reasons why. Why is the character sad? Is the person late? Did they not get picked? Did they ruin their dress? Did they ruin their shirt? Did their shoe break? Is their hair a mess? Did their car break down? Maybe let's do it this way. We've got the same prom, like the same location. It's going to be a dance, sad to excited, triumph, all that. But now you've got this couple going out to prom, and they're driving in the car, and the car breaks down, and smoke's coming out the front. Great, they're going to be late. And the one person, they were looking forward to this night for so long. It's just this, they were going to celebrate, and it was going to be this big happy moment, but it's been ruined. And maybe you have the one person, let's say, yeah, you got one person on the front, and they're trying to fix the car, but it's not going to happen. And they look inside, and they see that the person in the car is just like bummed out and just depressed. So they take the car radio, turn it on to some music, and ask that person for a dance, pull them out of the car door, and they're just dancing at the side of the road to this nice little music, and they make their own little prom night. Something like that. Like, that idea itself can be much, like, it can be done much better. Like, this was the initial just bleh draft of it. Now I would go in there and go, okay, let's take all of these elements and simplify and improve. So, for example, that's a really long idea. How can I simplify it? Well, I don't need to show the car coming to a stop. All I need to do is start the shot with one of the characters in the hood of the car, and then they lower the hood and and they go, and there you go. The whole idea of the car breaking down, done in one action. So I can simplify it like that. But by doing this kind of roadmap idea, I can start to come up with ideas and then just put a whole bunch of them down. Just don't come up with one. Come up with a whole bunch of variations. And then from there, narrow them down and improve them. And you can, like, switch it. Maybe we reverse it. Like, we can just change one thing. Maybe instead of triumph, it's failure. Maybe the character starts out excited and then becomes sad. As, like, maybe there's this person that's going to, oh, they're going to ask me out for a dance. Yeah. Oh, and they passed by. And then they just kind of get sad at the end. So this, at least for me, is a great way of coming up with ideas, because it basically kickstarts my brain into coming up with variations. And I can very easily just underline different things and come up with different ideas. So maybe we do a cooking shot and we're going from scared to happy. And let's say it's beating the odds. Again, you don't have to have this, but just even cooking happy to scared. Maybe it's a parent teaching their kid how to cook, and it's going to be, here's the big knife. You're going to learn how to chop today. And the kid is scared of taking the big knife, and like they don't want to cut, and they're trying to keep their fingers from the knife, and everything is just, oh, please no. And they cut and say, oh, it's not so bad. And then they start like cutting like a little bit more confidently, and the parent's kind of just there, and maybe the parent was worried as well, like just that kind of like, please don't cut your finger off. And then they see their kid getting happy and like being more confident, and that just makes them that like parental pride of like just happy to see their kid succeeding. And at the whole time they're just kind of holding the hand to make sure the kid doesn't go crazy with the knife. It could be something like that. So once again, just underline some things, and that idea just, it can come to you much more easily than trying to come up with all that on a blank sheet. Like if I had this is hard to come up with any ideas for. It's just really, really hard. So, yeah, that's the big thing. The biggest thing for me is making sure I don't start with a blank canvas. So hopefully that helps. If anyone has questions on that, definitely let me know. Now, let me take a sip of water here. Okay. And Wookie, thanks for the reminder. So, there's a question here. Every time I try to animate with the Reimu rig or the Quinn rig, my it's frozen. But when I work with Jules and Aya, Maya works fine. Do you think I need to upgrade Maya because I have 2018? And you can give it a try. The other thing you can do is double check your settings in Maya. There's a few settings that can maybe help. So one, I would reset your preferences just to make sure. But go into the animation mode here. Switch from parallel to DG if you're not on that already, or if you're on DG, switch back to parallel. Under the animation settings, also turn off GPU override. That can help sometimes. And then under display, try switching your rendering engine from OpenGL to DirectX 11 if you have it. All of those might help avoid the crashing. If none of that helps, try upgrading. See if that makes a difference. Okay, so we've got planning the shot. Once again, just to kind of reiterate, the big things that we want to do are we need to find our limits, we need to find our goals, and we need to keep it simple. The worst thing you could do is overcomplicate an idea. After that, we need, at least for me, what I will try to do is create this idea sheet that I can just use to help kickstart the brainstorming process and the idea creation process. That way I'm not starting from a blank canvas. That's the worst thing you can do. Okay, from there, we've got our idea, we've got all of that in place, we've got our goals and limits. Great, we're done. Not quite. There's a few other things that we can do to help make our ideas stronger, to make our ideas even better. So the first one to me is character. And once again, my handwriting. I also notice that I keep writing at an angle. I can't write straight. I always kind of write at a tilt there. So, character. The whole point of animating any shot, even a basic body mechanic shot, is that we are not animating a rig. We are not animating the Stewart rig. We are not animating the Aya rig. We are animating a character. And maybe we're animating the Stewart character, but this character is going to be Bob, or Steve, or Jones, or whatever character we want. They are not just this rig. They are a unique person in this unique moment. Now, when you're doing body mechanics tests, this is not as important, but it can help you come up with ways the character will move and little mannerisms that will make the shot more interesting and less of that just doing an action, done. It's going to have character in there. Now, when you're coming up with characters, there's a whole bunch of different things that we can do, but to break it down into just simple things, we need to ask ourselves questions. So ask questions. And what are those questions? Well, they're pretty much anything. I usually break that into who, what, where, when, why, and how. You ask all of those questions about your character and about the scene that they're in. Who are they? Are they Stewart rig? No, they are going to be Bob. Bob is a middle-aged man who works at a job he hates, but he has a family that he loves, and he knows that even though he hates his job, he's doing it for them, and it gives him like that drive to get up every morning. There we go. We've got a little backstory there. Now, you don't have to go that deep in there. Usually for the who, I try to think of at least 3 adjectives to describe the character. So 3 adjectives basically means 3 words to describe this person. So are they, for example, hopeful? But tired. And let's think of a third. Hopeful, tired, and kind. There we go. Well, this is going to be a very different character than if we pick 3 different adjectives, which is going to be, let's go with angry, dedicated. I'm just coming up with whatever word kind of comes to mind first. There's no rhyme or reason for this. Angry, dedicated, and let's say we could go with tired here as well. So we just change a few of them, or we could change all of them. So we come up with all of these, and A to J has this great link here, that building a character link. That is like, especially if you're doing a pantomime shot, the more questions we ask, the better. So that's a really great resource right there. At the very least, try to think of these of 3 adjectives. Now, if we have these characters here, we could have the same character doing this, or the same rig doing the same action, but just by thinking of how this character with these adjectives would do it, it changes the entire thing. So let's say we've got the character getting ready for work in the morning. And once again, we'll kind of use that same character before. They hate their job, but they've got a family and they're doing the job for their family. Well, person A, we'll call them Bob. Bob gets up in the morning, and let's say we're going to simplify this. They're making their coffee in the morning. And Bob gets up and goes to make his coffee, goes to reach for his coffee mug, but maybe one of his kids left a toy in the coffee mug. And he goes to pour the coffee and he says, oh, there's the toy. And darn kids. But he's kind, and there's just that kind of like, even though he's tired in the morning, the bag's under his eye, he takes out the toy and just kind of puts it gently on the counter before putting the coffee into the mug. And it's going to be a long day. He's tired, but he knows who he's doing this for. Now we go with, let's say, Dave. Dave is angry. Dave is dedicated. He's going to get his coffee. He's going to work no matter what. He's tired, but no, he's going to do it. But same scenario. He gets that coffee mug. But because he's dedicated, he's going to be a little bit more kind of ready to go right from the start. He's maybe a little bit better dressed, in the sense of like, he's already ready. He's got the briefcase there. He's going to get there, even though he's tired. So he's got a slouch. He gets the mug, but the kids left the toys in his mug again. And he still likes his family. We still keep that the same, but now there's that little bit of like, gotta be patient. So he takes the toy out and maybe he just tosses it behind him instead of placing it down gently. He doesn't really care about the toy. That anger is a little too much for him. So he takes the toy and pours the coffee, and he's grumbling the whole time to himself, takes a sip, and then walks out. Same scenario, but we've changed the way the character is going to interact with the environment, going to interact with the world around them. So this is going to be very important to create a performance that is not just rig doing a thing. We want to think of how each character would change and interact in a different way. And this is where you can explore. Come up with a few different characters and try variations. Which character is the most interesting to watch, or the most interesting to move through this scene in this scenario? So you do that. And once again, you ask all of these questions. What is the story? What happened before? What's going to happen next? What's the subtext of the scene? Subtext is very important. And especially when you're doing pantomime and acting, subtext becomes key. Is what does the character actually feel in this moment? Not what do they show outwardly, what do they feel inwardly? So this could be something, for example, especially when you're doing a dialogue shot where maybe someone tastes something, it's like, oh, this is delicious. Do they actually mean it? Or they're just saying it to be kind, whereas inside they're going, this is the worst thing I've ever had, and it's just like, get the lemon face, the face just puckered and it's tasty, yum. That's going to be, if we think of that subtext, even if they're saying something positive, maybe they're thinking something negative or vice versa. What is the character thinking in this moment? What is the character doing? When are they doing it? Is it early morning? Is it late at night? How is that going to change them? Why are they doing it? How are they doing it? Think of all these questions. Ask questions about anything. And for any of you who've been in my streams before, one of the things that I do when I'm animating is I'm always asking myself questions. Why am I moving this arm this way? How should it move? Why is it doing what it's doing? Can I make it better? You want to ask yourself questions, and you want to ask yourself questions about your characters. So definitely check out that sheet that A to the J posted, but even if it's just simple questions, it can help a lot. So once you have your idea, you want to start thinking of your characters, because that's going to change a lot of how the character is going to interact with the world around them. Now, from there, the next thing that I will typically start thinking of is the cinematography. And this is all before I shoot reference. So you'll notice that we haven't even gotten to reference yet. For me personally, I like to come up with a good idea of what I want before I jump into shooting reference, because then I can start trying things out in the reference, and if I feel it's not working, I can start making changes right away versus just going in blind. So, cinematography. I'm going to actually be doing a demo on cinematography. I'm hoping to do it tomorrow, but depending on work today, I might have to save it for next week. But I want to do a whole talk on cinematography and how I plan for it, and how ways you can do master studies to improve your understanding of cinematography, all of that good stuff. But the big thing here is, at least what you can start off with is, when you're thinking of your shot, think of a few different things. What is the goal of the shot? So the goal of the shot, once again, is a body mechanics shot, in which case you should have everything nice and visible. Is it an acting shot, in which case we want to see the emotion of the character, which means we should be a little closer? Is it a dialogue shot? What's the goal of this shot? This will kind of give you a range of where to put the camera. The more important questions then after that are, what's the character supposed to feel? And so, character feel. What does the character feel, and what does the audience feel? So, why is that different? Well, this is where we can start positioning the camera to help either enhance how the character is supposed to feel. So, for example, let's say the character is supposed to feel very small. Maybe they did something very embarrassing, and they kind of feel like everyone's looking down at them. Well, if we have a shot where the character is right in the middle of screen here, and we've got this low angle, so the camera's low looking up at the character. Just by keeping it simple here, does this character look embarrassed and small? Not really. They're nice and large and center screen. But if I think of, okay, I want this character to feel embarrassed, let's make them feel embarrassed. I can go with a high angle shot and maybe push the character a little bit more to the side and make them maybe not that small on screen, but a little smaller on screen. And we're looking down at them a little bit. And maybe the character is actually looking up. higher here. So now this character kind of feels much smaller and less powerful compared to this one where we've got that high angle shot. This character feels more lonely and sad, and maybe I have the arm kind of holding on there. Which one's going to make the character feel more embarrassed, more kind of shy, or kind of pulling away? This one. So I'm trying to think of how the character is going to feel, and then try to think of how I can use the camera to help push that. Once again, I'll talk about this a little bit more, hopefully tomorrow or next week, about how to start thinking about that and learning all of this stuff. Now, the other thing is, how should the audience feel? This kind of goes back to that example I was talking about before, where maybe the character is happy and walking through the scene willy-nilly. And hey, Hazmat, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. 6 months, jeez. How's it been 6 months already? Thank you so much. So let me just move this here. So let's do another kind of comparison here. So we've got a character walking down a hallway, and we want this kind of scary feeling. But if I frame it up so that we've got our one character here, and they're just kind of doopy-doopy-doo. Let's get that leg to work properly. I wasn't actually expecting to start drawing today. I was thinking, nah, we're not going to draw anything. It'll be fine. So they're just kind of walking along, happy as can be. And you'll notice when I draw, I tend to draw very loosely, especially when I'm planning. My head's a little small. Okay, the eraser. There we go. So they're kind of there, and they're whistling a jaunty tune. Just kind of happy as can be, walking along. And we have this monster creature like sneaking up behind them. Well, if I do something like this, where I have this flat composition, it's just kind of flat like this. Is that scary? Does that feel imposing? No, it feels kind of Looney Tunes-esque. This could easily be, I always forget his name, that big hairy red monster. He's got the like tennis shoes, sneakers, big arms. He's just got the like eyes there. Forget his name. Gossamer, is that his name? Yeah, that could be. Sounds about right. So you could do something like that. It would be very Looney Tunes-esque. But that's not what I want the audience to feel. The character is going to be happy either way. The monster is going to be sneaking either way. But I want the audience to feel more scared, more tense about how this is shown here. So let's do a different variation here. We have the character, and we're going to have the hallway kind of leading backwards, so we can have the creature sneaking up behind them. So the character is going to be walking over here, just whistling his jaunty tune, happy as can be. Maybe this nice kind of close up on the character so we can just see them kind of moving along. And the creature is going to be behind them. Creeping up, reaching out, maybe this like long clawed hand over to them as they're going through and filling up the screen. Something like that. Which one is more dynamic and is going to make the audience a little bit more scared, especially if we take this now and let's remember the brush I need. If I make this like really dark over here, just this dark hallway, we're just getting in that little bit of light and you have the hand reaching out of the darkness. This definitely feels much more visually dynamic and makes it more interesting to the audience compared to this, where it's just this little Looney Tunes-esque run. Even if I made the creepiest walk, that camera angle is going to fight me. So we need to think of what do we want the character to feel and what do we want the audience to feel, and how can we use the camera to enhance that. We don't want to just throw the camera in and just put, camera, done. Now, the other things that we want to think about are who has the power control in a scene, what are the composition guides we can use, are we using the rule of thirds, are we using golden ratio, center framing, all of that. I'm going to be talking about that in another stream. That's going to be a whole other talk. We'd be here for like a full stream just to go over all of that properly. But as long as you answer the character feel and the audience feel, that's going to be the most important questions there. So think of your cinematography. And then from there, I start going into my reference. Now I'm going to start shooting the reference. Now, just a few things to keep in mind with reference is, and I should probably just go full screen for this. So for the reference, the big thing is reference doesn't have to be perfect. You are not aiming for the one perfect take that is everything absolutely 100% right. Reference is a guide. Reference is there to give us ideas. If your timing isn't 100%, if your posing isn't 100%, whatever, that's okay. That's fine. If your acting isn't the greatest, I'm not a great actor in my reference, that's okay. We can push that in the animation. Reference is just there to give us the idea, the structure, the overall timing of the shot and when things should happen approximately. And that's about it. Don't aim for one perfect take either. There will be many times where we're going to be shooting reference and there's going to be a part in one shot that's like, oh man, I really like the way I do this hand motion. But this other part, I really like how I just move in this scene. Mix them together. Take the hand motion from one clip, the motion of the hips of the other, and merge them together. Now, that can be tricky when you haven't done that before, merging bits of reference together. But it's really just kind of watching the core elements of what you want and putting it into, like, for example, the hand. You watch the core elements and you time it so that it matches the motion of what you have in the other piece of reference. It takes practice, but it's just kind of picking and choosing what you like without going so far as two totally separate pieces that have no relation with each other. So for example, if my chest is going this way, but my hips are going that way in two pieces of reference, that's going to be very hard to merge together. So don't aim for one perfect take. Be very aware of what reference you can shoot and what you'll need to find. Sometimes we can't shoot reference. Sometimes there's reference that I can't do myself. For example, I can't dance. So if ever I have a shot that I need a character dancing, I'm going to look up reference online or find someone who actually knows how to dance and ask them to record reference for me. So you need to be aware of that. If you need a character lifting something really, really heavy, don't try to fake it. I've seen this happen a lot with a lot of students where they're going to have a character and the character is going to lift this super heavy thing. Maybe it's a big boulder or something. And they're just going to lift up a laundry basket, an empty laundry basket, and pretend that it's heavy, a cardboard box. you can shoot that to get an idea of what the general motion is, but then look at other reference of people actually lifting something heavy. That is very important. If we're just guessing, it's not going to work. And hyperres, yeah. Like when you're a guy and you need a female reference or vice versa, or if you're a very skinny person and you need a reference of a big heavy person or vice versa, you can get the idea in there, but it's always better to then also look up additional reference to find the nuances. Now I actually have an example of that here. So this is the start of the April Fool's moment where I'm going to show my embarrassing old reference. So yay me. So let's do this here. So the first shot I'm going to show here is, well, actually, before we do that, let me actually get through the list. So a few other quick things. Use your reference to explore cinematography. Get as many angles as you can. If you have multiple cameras, especially if you have your phone and another camera, shoot from multiple angles. Always think of your principles. Even when you're doing your planning, all of that, look for those things. Now let's look at the reference here. So we'll start with, well, since we were talking about like having a base, let's take a look at a shot here. So, I'm actually going backwards from the order I was going to do it in, but that's fine. So this was a shot I worked on when I was in the creature classes at Animation Mentor. Unfortunately, I never got to finish this shot, so this is a work in progress. A lot of this stuff is horrible, but I'm going to show it anyway. So with this, we just have this ogre that's fighting a dragon. That impact never worked out, and that run was awful. And I never finished that impact there. So we've got this shot here, and I wish I had been able to properly finish this because I actually really liked working on it, but didn't have the time. This is where my idea was too complex for the amount of time I needed. I should have simplified it. I should have just started it from here and then had the run and that's it. But then I had all this other stuff at the beginning. It's too much for the time I had. But anyway, that's a whole other talk. We've got this run here. Now, we've got a lot of things to deal with on a shot like this. We've got an ogre and we've got a dragon. The ogre is not the same body proportions as me. It's huge. It's got big muscly arms. It's a big character. I am not that body type at all. This is more of a gorilla than anything else. We also have a dragon that is not even close to me. I have no anatomical reference to this. I can't do the things that a dragon does. So, how did I approach doing this? Well, we're going to go back in time. The first thing I did was I studied a lot of reference of animals. So this was some of the reference that I'd found for this shot. So we've got reference of gorillas and how they move. We've got gorillas running, or in this case, chimpanzees. So loss of motion. I found reference of bats. I knew that I wanted this dragon to run on all fours, and you've got these big wings. So I studied how does a dragon, or how would a bat with those types of wings move. And the fun thing about this is my favorite part of animation is you learn something really cool things. I learned that bats can actually run. So this is a bat walking, and this is a bat running. And then the back legs were more going to be a chicken or a cat. I think I ended up going with a cat for the back leg. But we have all of these bits and pieces. So let's start with the dragon. For the dragon, like I said, in the end I mixed in some cat reference, which I think I have some cat reference here, but I'm not going to take some time to look for it. So what I ended up doing, because I couldn't shoot the reference myself, is I did a quick animatic right here. So essentially what I did was I took my reference of the bat chest, I analyzed that, I took the reference of the back legs of a cat, analyzed that, I took the head of a bird, I think an eagle, analyzed how they move their heads, and then I created this. It's very simple. And that was it. It's just a quick cycle. And I used this to try and figure out my timing. In this case, this felt too light, so I slowed it down a little bit. But you can see, it's just mixing the two together and then trying to create something that feels natural. And you can do this with, in this case, I just had simple spheres and I just translated them and moved them around a little bit. And then I figured out how the head would overlap between there, how the wings would move, all of that, and how the tail would overlap. But there we go. So I took this creature that doesn't exist, this bat, cat, bird, lizard hybrid, and I took elements and merged them together. And because I did it in this animatic here, I was able to quickly go into Maya, it still took time, and not have to try and figure it out from scratch. So this helps a lot. I highly recommend doing simple animatics like this. And you can see drawing skills, non-existent here. I drew a circle, very basic legs. The arms are just sticks. And the head, if you look at it, I just drew one shape and then translated it. I didn't redraw the head because I was too lazy. And the tail is just awful. Look at all those lines. I never cleaned it up. But there you go. So I created this very quick animatic. Now, for the ogre, I had the run of the, let's see, can I do this in 3D instead of 2D? Yeah, you can definitely do that. Just take a sphere, move the sphere up and down, and just kind of use basic elements. You could even do it with the rig as well. Just do a quick cycle with the rig versus trying to animate it in the shot right away. Study those motions first before doing a full shot. So you can definitely do this in 3D, but even if you have zero 2D experience, you can do this with just shapes. Do a circle shape, move it. If you have something like Clip Studio, you can animate that very quickly. There's a bunch of free 2D animation softwares you can use, like Krita. Krita is great for doing quick animatics like this. And actually, I'm trying to think, maybe I did use Krita for this. And what software is this? This software here that I'm scrubbing through, this is Keyframe MP. Or Keyframe Pro. Which is basically an animation software that's made for scrubbing through animation, playing it back very, very well. Keyframe MP is the free version. If you want to get the paid version, you can go for Keyframe Pro. Okay. Now, how many years has it been? Since I did this I animated this, what was it, 2000, is it going to show the date on here? 2013, so 9 years ago since I animated this. Now, that was the dragon. I came up with all of these concepts before, along with the reference, but let's say for the ogre, we've got the ogre run, which I could use the chimpanzee run, great. But what about the whole beginning, all of the acting bits in there? Well, I don't have the physicality of an ogre, but I can still act it out. There's nothing wrong with that. I can try to act it out and understand how things are going to move. I'm going to change things a lot based on the weight of the ogre and whatnot, but it gives me a start. So now let's look at this embarrassing reference. So this was me just going in the backyard and acting out how the ogre would move. And you can see I almost fell off the deck there. So I made sure I was barefoot because the ogre is barefoot. I wanted to see how the feet kind of move in the back there. And it's not perfect. It's not even close to the same. And exactly, yeah, nothing's changed. This is 9 years ago. And I looked at this reference this morning and it's like, have I changed at all? I don't wear a watch anymore. I don't wear a necklace. The hair is long again. I had shorter hair. The beard, definitely more gray, and the same with the mustache. But aside from that, not too much changed. But like you can see, it's very basic reference, but you can see some of the elements of what I had before in my final shot. So we're mixing and matching. The reference doesn't have to be perfect. We're using it as basically a way to generate ideas and to, what's the right word I'm looking for? To make sure things will work. Yes, I do have legs. I'm not just this here. I've got feet. And yes, thanks. My backyard, I live out in the country. It's just woods, just trees and woods back there. There's actually deer that sleep in my yard. Like there's this tree back here. There's a bunch of deer that just sleep there. Sometimes we'll wake up in the morning and see them sleeping there. They're really cute. But anyway, that's a whole other tangent. Reference doesn't have to be one-to-one. So do not aim for the perfect take. Do not think your reference has to be perfect. You want to use it to explore ideas. Now, things we want to watch out for, and this is something I see a lot in reference, even mine included, but especially student reference, is doing things and ideas that are very symmetrical. So you'll have a character sitting there, and I'm going to bring my hands up. They're going to be doing something like this. Is this the best idea I can come up with? Where the character is perfectly symmetrical, or maybe a character will be doing... Well, I'm trying to think of something else symmetrical. They're going to be talking, they're going to be doing something like that. I do this all the time when I talk. Is that the most interesting? No. Now, does my reference have to be perfect? No, we already established that. But when I look at my reference and I start noticing, oh, I'm really twinning everything. This is my chance to break that up now before going into my animation. So instead of doing this, maybe I do this. Now that's more dynamic. That's more interesting. I'm not twinning. Instead of having my character thinking like this, maybe I do something like this. Or maybe more like that. Or I could, let's see, trying to think what feels natural. Like just kind of hold my other hand here. Something like that. Maybe just something like this even. Try to explore those poses. There are sometimes symmetrical poses where you're going to have a character doing this. Maybe a flex. Well, instead of doing that, maybe you do this. And hey, Sarah, thanks so much for the 27 months. Jeez, thank you so much. Also, hello, hope you're doing well. So, like, instead of doing this, do this. Suddenly it's got more dynamic. It's less twinned. Or maybe like this, where one arm is down and the other arm is up. You try to exaggerate those elements so that you take away those elements. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're shooting reference, you want to think of the principles, think of the appeal, think of the timing. If you're noticing that your timing is always even, try to push it. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we can use it to troubleshoot issues early on. Okay. So, with that, let's see. And how are people comfortable looking at themselves on screen? Do I look bad, or is it common to feel weird when seeing yourself? Okay, there's many things to this. So, first of all, it is normal to feel weird looking at yourself. It's the same thing with listening to yourself. A lot of people hate listening to themselves. Like if you record your voice on an answering machine or something like that, a lot of people hate it. It doesn't sound like them to them. That's very normal. It's the same with seeing yourself. A lot of actors will not watch their films or listen to the stuff that they create because they can't stand looking at themselves on screen. It's just not, they don't like it. That's normal. As animators, we want to get past that. Not in the sense that, oh yeah, I look great on screen. No, I feel like I look like a fool on screen half the time. But that's not the point of the reference. The point of the reference is to understand the motion. So that's the important thing. The other part, at least for me, is I have a twin brother. So I've grown up looking at myself my whole life. So when I see myself on screen, like here, it doesn't feel weird to me. It never really felt weird. But that's a me thing. That's because I was very lucky to have a twin. For most people, they don't have that. So you have to get used to just seeing yourself in that way. And it doesn't mean, once again, that you have to be totally comfortable and think that it's the best thing you've ever seen. But we need to shoot reference as much as we can, if we can. So we've got all of this in here. Okay, we can start planning our shot. Now, let's see. Are we going to animate this video? No, this was old reference. This is a reference from 9 years ago for a shot. And we're just going over the ideas of planning and coming up with shot ideas. Okay, so with this, let's go over another reference here. So this is going to be even older. Looking at a shot I animated for class 3. So this would have probably been 2011? No, 2012. Start of 2012. So 10 years ago. So this was class 3, and I wanted to do a shot where a character goes up and places a star on top of the tree. I had my Christmas tree up at the time, so I figured, that's a great idea. I'll do that. And I shot my first reference. So this was the first reference. I apologize for the camera quality. This is old footage on an old camera. So this was my footage from 10 years ago and my shot idea, which I thought, oh, wow, this is great. I honestly hated the idea when I shot the reference, but it's like, okay, this is all I've got. Okay, so we've got our reference here. Is it good? It's okay. Not great. Why is it not great? Well, there's a few different reasons. One of the things, and this is what my mentor critiqued me about, is there's no contrast. Again, think of the principles. Think of the basics of animation. We want squash and stretch. We want timing. We want spacing. We want reversals. We want things that are dynamic. Now, we're not always going to do that, because if you have a subtle shot, maybe it's just a character sitting there not doing much. But in this case, this is a character doing an action. And if you watch the character, we've got a C curve. Oh boy, my drawing tool is slaggy there. A C curve. They stop. A C curve. They get up. A C curve. They stand up. A C curve. They push the thing on. A C curve. Oh, they're reaching. A C curve. Oh boy, am I really excited here. Oh, look at that. We've got a reversal. Wowie. And look at that. It stays. The whole shot, the character's just doing this the whole time. That's not interesting at all. That's boring. How is that going to be interesting to look at for the audience? We can make that more dynamic. And this is thinking, okay, I've got my initial reference. Let's apply animation principles to this. How can the timing be more interesting? We've got a bunch of steps here that are all the exact same. Just step, 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 step. The character stands up, and they stand up, and it's kind of linear and even. Okay. We can make that more interesting. And actually, a good point for anyone who doesn't know what a reversal is when you have your line of action going from one direction and you reverse it to go the other way. So this is usually considered a C to a reverse C, or vice versa. So, or sometimes you'll go into an S, or like a straight to the opposite straight, something like that. Some sort of reversal. Okay, so that was my first take. My mentor took a look at it and went, no, it's boring. You need to make it more interesting. Try to come up with a better idea. The other thing that they didn't like was that the ending is just kind of boring. The character just goes up and does the thing, and that's it. That's not interesting. It's just, like I mentioned earlier on, how I mentioned I had a problem with simplifying my ideas too much. This was an example of that, where okay, I'm going to have the character go up on a chair and reach for this thing. But that's all it is. There's no variation. The character walks in, stands up, all at around the same speed. It's boring. So, with the notes of my mentor, I did another take. And this take, you can see the Christmas tree was taken away. So I didn't have my Christmas tree to act with, but I changed the idea a little bit. To make it more dynamic, I had the character kick the chair in and take a jump up onto that chair. And I was smarter this time and actually wore a shirt that wasn't black. And instead of succeeding, the character was going to go up, place the ornament, and then drop it and go through and try to catch it there. So this was the new take. And this is much stronger. Is it perfect? No. For one, you can see I'm mixing two takes right here. One take here, and then a second take here, and they don't match up too well. This is okay. As long as you have another take, like I believe I had a third take here where I could mix them together and take elements of the slip and then the reach before it comes down into the grab there. That's the important bit. But I came up here and we've got multiple takes. That's fine. But you can see it's more dynamic. Instead of having the character just walk, lots of the same steps and then move linearly, we've got this hold at the beginning, take a step, big fast motion. Already we've got a few different reversals here. On the kick, we've got this. The character comes down. We've got a slight anticipation there before it builds up here. Reverses. Reverse. And then big reversal here. And then we go for that. Okay. So much more dynamic. And we changed the ending to be more dynamic as well. Now, just a side note on reference. One of the... Oh, actually, to answer that question, what software do I use to mix my takes? I use Adobe Premiere, but you can use a DaVinci Resolve, which is free to do that. And just cut them up and mix them together. Or sometimes like I'll put like a smaller window here with one take and maybe another window there with a like maybe a close-up of the face for an acting shot. So I can like put all of it all in one video for my mentor or director to see, or just to bring into Maya. So I just have everything together. So just kind of note on reference. One of the biggest things about reference that is important is that it lets us get the little nuances in a shot, the little things that we might not notice. So these can be little things like if you look at the chair, when I step on it, see how we see the cushion drop down first right there? Boop. And then the chair slides a few frames after. So my foot sinks and then presses forward. That's a great little detail right there. Now, if I had a soft cushion on my chair that the character is jumping on, I could do that. That's a nice little touch. And you can see that the chair doesn't move evenly. It shifts with the back leg here first. And my drawing tool is a little laggy here. And then this leg catches up afterwards. So there's a little bit of like a twist in the chair. As I come down, I can see what leads, what follows. Like we can really see that this arm here is really going for it right there. And the elbows really shoot up really quick right through there. So we've got all of these elements that we can look for. But one of my favorite things about reference is when you get that real moment. And this can be a lot of little things. It can be those moments between reference. I notice this a lot, and it's some of my favorite bits of reference is when you have those bits between the reference where you're thinking of ideas, and you're going to notice that you do these little tiny things when you're not thinking about what you're going to do for your shot, but you're just kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? What should I do? You're going to be like doing these little mannerisms. For me, I do this a lot, I've noticed in my reference. And those are great little things that you can sprinkle into maybe not this shot, but other shots, because those are real moments. Now, I was very lucky here, in the sense that this moment here, when I drop the can, was not supposed to happen. And I was supposed to drop the cannon. It was going to go straight down right there. So this was like, okay, I know what I'm doing here. It's going fine, going fine. And then this moment here, when I hit it backwards right there, see how I'm looking over here? I didn't expect to hit it backwards right there. It was not part of the plan. And it takes me a while before my eyes have to turn and I have to look and I try to grab it again and I hit it again. And you can see the hand just kind of flails crazily right there as I'm trying to grab it. And then this reaction here, that's a real reaction because this can hit, this is a glass pane right here. And it hit the glass pane and I thought I was going to shatter it. So this reaction of like lifting that leg right there was me actually like flinching from the, oh God, I just broke this thing. This is the real reaction here. And that was perfect. Like it's, if I had broken something horrible, but that's the, one of my favorite parts of reference is when you capture these moments, these real moments. And it's hard. You're not always going to get that. That's very rare, at least for me. But we want to shoot reference. We want to try and feel out these motions. That foot raise, it's so pathetic. It's just like, little tiny foot raise. And the hand poses. Like all of these hand poses, that's genuine, like, oh God, what did I do? Just curled up. Even the shoulder curling up there. So reference is very, very important. Now, there will be times when you can't shoot reference. Physically, you can't, or maybe it's just too dangerous or whatnot. Regardless, you look up reference online. You study the motions that you want to do. If you don't understand the motions, you're not going to get a good shot. Now, later on, when you have more experience, reference becomes less necessary. Not completely like gone. And we can use it in different ways, but especially when you're starting, you need to understand these, because if you don't understand how a character is moving or how a creature is moving or what's happening, there's no way you can animate it believably. So that's very important. So that's reference. Now, a side note on reference. When you're shooting reference, we talked about how this is a real moment here. That's great. These real moments, like I said, are very few and far between. And because of that, there is a common issue I see in reference, which is people not giving their characters enough time to think and process something. So, for example, a character will see something and they're just going to see it and do something right away. You need to have time for your characters to process something. You need to have the characters think. If the characters aren't thinking, they're not living. So, for example, let's say I'm going to go grab my water bottle over to the side. Now, I know where that is. I can just go, okay, grab it and drink from it right there because I know where it is. I know what's happened to it, or it's right there. But what if I didn't know where it was? I would have to look, kind of search, there it is, and then grab it. And you can see that there's that pause. Now, when you're shooting reference and you want to get that pause, the biggest thing that can be helpful, at least for me, is doing the mental like soundtrack of your thought process. Instead of just going and then grab the bottle and go, say it out loud, or at least say in your head, go, where's my water bottle? Oh, there it is. And then you grab it. If you say those lines in your head, it gives you that extra padding and that thinking time. So, like, let's say I'm going to type something instead of just going and type. I would go, what do I want? Oh, hello, dear Mr. something. And then you say it along with. That can help give you that character, give your character time to think. Also keep in mind the reaction time. The other thing I tend to see is characters reacting to things too fast because in reference, we know when something's about to happen typically. Okay, I'm going to get pulled and I'm going to fall over or something's going to jump out and scare me. We are expecting it because that's the part of the idea. We know what the script says, and we have the characters react too soon. That is not good. We need to think of reaction time. And if you can't react genuinely to something, which is hard because you know what's happening, look up reference. So this is the great thing about the age we live in now. We live in the age of YouTube and reaction videos and stuff. So you can just look up any video on any type of emotion, like characters crying, characters laughing, characters being scared, and analyze it. So here is just a random video I found. This was a jump scare compilation from Markiplier. So there's going to be a jump scare here. So be prepared. For anyone who doesn't like jump scares, I'm not going to play with audio just so it's less popping. But just keep in mind something's going to pop out here in just a second. So jump scare warning here. Look away if you don't like jump scares, then we'll frame through it. So if we look at his reaction here, it's right after this one. Look at his reaction. See how long it took between the thing popping up and him jumping back. Let's frame through that. So I'm going to play through. Okay. Right here. So you can see when the game reacts right here. This is frame 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And his jaw moves. 11, 12, 13. Now his facial expression has changed and his eyes are starting to blink. So he's leading with his mouth first. And he has an anticipation where is really just his lip kind of coming up before the jaw drops down and then his eye closes. So his mouth is leading this whole action. It took about 10 to 13 frames for that reaction to kick in properly to this jump scare. And this is someone who's focused on what they're doing. Now, this video is at 30 frames per second. So this is about a quarter to half a second, or I should say, sorry, a third to about half a second of time. That would be about 6 to 12 frames of animation right there for the character to react to this moment. That is very important. Something that will break your shots when you are going through them is not having that proper reaction time, of not having characters take time to see something happen, their brain to register, and then the reaction happens. The exception to this is outside influence. So for example, if I was going to be punched in the face, my face is not going to wait a few seconds before reacting. It's going to be an instant reaction. My face gets knocked back right away. But I will still have the emotional and thought process reaction that's going to be delayed a little bit. So always keep that in mind. And once again, we have so much reference we can just pull from online to figure out how long does it take for people on average to react to being scared, or how long does it take when they're confused and they don't know what's going on. Look up confused reaction videos and you can find some really good stuff on there. Or even just look at films if you want that. So with all of that, we've got our reference. Once again, base notes, don't aim for perfect. Don't aim for one perfect take. It's okay to have multiple takes. The point of reference is to play around with the idea, understand the mechanics underneath it, and to explore different ideas very quickly versus trying to figure it out all in your animation and then figuring out it doesn't work. I love this song. So with that, all of that comes through. Now we go into the planning phase. Now planning is personal. The biggest thing with planning is to keep in mind of who is going to see it. That's the big thing you have to ask yourself when you're doing planning. Who's going to see it? If it's no one else, it's just you, which is most of the planning that we tend to do in the industry. You can do whatever planning you want. Honestly, planning is just writing down ideas or drawing out ideas to get a clear roadmap so that you're not having to constantly look back at your reference, go, wait, what did the character do in this moment? Oh, wait, what did the character do here? You write down those ideas and those notes of those cool things that you saw so that you can quickly reference them and just animate faster. Now, if someone's going to see the reference, or sorry, the planning, then we need to be a little bit more careful on what we do. Now, for Animation Mentor, I typically recommend 3 pages of reference. Or sorry, 3 pages of planning. I'm mixing up my terms. 3 pages of planning. You have your notes page, your timing and composition page, and then your exploration page. So, just to kind of show an example here, this is the shot that we had for the Christmas tree one. Now, actually, let's go to the first one. So this was the original right here. So it goes up. You can see it's so slow. And then reaches up and puts the thing on there. Okay. So the planning that I did, let's open that up here. So the first one is my notes page. And back then I used to do my notes and compositions together. So here you can see the composition of the shot. So I framed the shot and I drew out how the character is going to move through the scene. I use the rule of thirds here to kind of lay them out on the scene and make sure it's nice and appealing. And just trying to figure out how that composition will work. You can do this in 1 drawing or 2. I did the whole kind of breakdown here. I also did a bunch of notes. And this is kind of drawing all of those things that we mentioned before. What are the limits of the scene? Who is the character in the scene? All of those things. So what does the shot call for? What are the limitations? How many frames do I have? What is my time budget? What are my goals? Here's the character stuff, which I didn't do too much of back then, unfortunately. I also had just different notes on different moments that I wanted to make sure that I got in there. So I have the notes page. The next one was the timing page. The timing page was a similar breakdown, but I kind of quickly redrew very quick thumbnails. You can see I'm not the greatest artist. The body's bent in the wrong spot there. But it's really just kind of thinking of my line of action and how I'm going to push those poses there. Kind of time out my main beats. So I'm actually putting my main keys in there. And then this is probably my favorite thing about getting this in here, is I then do a timing pass for it. So let me zoom in here. I forget plus and minus. Easy enough. Okay. So right down here at the very bottom, you'll notice I did a timing chart right there. And let's move this so that we can see it. My camera's not in the way. Okay. There we go. So I did a timing chart. And the way I like to think about it is in beats. So I have my timing here. I just do a timeline. I draw this out and I'll put out where all my key points are here. So all of these keys right there are the same as these right here. And what I'll do is I will draw out this like stepped graph of the shot and kind of use this as a visual guide to see what is my timing like throughout the whole shot. So I have the small steps at the beginning, the step on the chair, the other foot gets up on the chair. I take a small step and rebalance myself. Then I reach for the tree, place the ornament, take a step, and then hold. I look for these beats in there. And by looking at this, you can see where things are feeling a little even. These first 3 beats, the step, 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 even though there's a lot of little things, that whole section there takes about the same amount of time as the next beat. Takes the same amount of time as the next beat here. And then we finally get to one that's a little shorter. Then we get to a long one. This beat here, the place ornament, looks to be about the same size as these ones. That hold at the end, about the same size. So really, this shot, just visually looking at this here, I can see that it's boring. I can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beats that are almost exactly the same and a few that are a little different. No, we want to push that to be much more dynamic. Let's see, do I have another one here that I've done? Just seeing if I have one that's a little bit more dynamic. Not sure. I'd have to look for it. But you can see that it's not that interesting. So this is a chance for me right now to go, okay, how can I make this a little bit more interesting? Maybe the first 3 steps here are going to be very fast. Little tiny steps. And then the step on the chair is a little slower. And then the other foot on the chair, maybe that's the slowest. So we start fast, medium, slow. We do things like that. Try to think of it as a musical beat. Like you can see, I put notes here to remind myself, and I still didn't do it right. You want to make your shot interesting. If everything is happening and falling on the same frames or the same like ranges, it's not interesting. Let's see. I'm starting A1 this term. Do you usually get this planning chart done before shooting the reference? What approach did you take to study the beat of the frames? So this is something I do after the reference. So I'll study my reference and I'll time out my reference and use that as my base to start with. From there, I will start to push and adjust my reference or my timing to be more interesting. So this is from my reference. I wish I had the other shot. The class, no, it's class 5. Oh, here it is. So this was another shot that I had done. So you'll notice, let me open it up here. Similar thing. So this was a stick up shot. So same thing, my main beats of the shot. I wrote out my dialogue, all of that. And you can see I did the same kind of beats at the bottom here to figure out where everything works. Now this is more complicated because it's a 2-character shot, but same basic idea. So this is not something you need to do. Honestly, you don't have to do this, but at least think about it. Try to see where things are starting to get a little bit boring. How can you make that more interesting? That's the whole point of planning. We want to come up with these we want to notice these things now versus halfway through our shot where we're animating going, oh, this is boring. No, I can figure this out now. Now, the last bit that I will do when I am doing a planning shot is that I will do what I call an exploration pass. So this is taking all of my key poses and seeing how I can push them, how to make them more dynamic. And you can see, once again, my drawing skills back then, not great. I usually just did this little keyframe or keyhole drawing kind of character. And this was just kind of thinking, okay, how can I have the character bend forward? What kind of curve do I want? Do I want him straighter? Do I want to change the chair to be the other way around? Is that helpful? When they stand back, what's the line of action that I want? All of that stuff. Doing that exploration pass just helps you figure out your poses and kind of gives you those ideas. And once again, it doesn't have to be well drawn. At the very simplest, and you can see it up here, I like to do what I call a line of action pass, where I just draw out the line of action throughout the scene, my main lines of action, and see if it's interesting. If your line of action is always just doing this the whole time, not interesting. So I start with a curve, then I get into an S shape, then I wanted a reversal before it swings back into a straight, before going back into another reversal here. I did not succeed with that, but that was my idea. So I like this because this helps me see if my shot is kind of boring. Once again, anything that lets you see whether the shot is going to be exciting or boring early on is very, very helpful. So things like that can be huge in your planning. Now, once again, planning is personal. Planning is not something that need to follow this rule and this exact structure. No. The whole point of planning is so that you can find solutions, have things easily on hand. So for me, for example, when I was blocking this out, I could just look at this sheet right here and go, okay, here are all my keys. 1, 9, 17, 25. Just put them all in there. I have a base to start with. I know the line of action that I want. I know the basic pose that I want. I know the timing that I want. All of that there. And I've got any notes or any important things right here that I need to pay attention to. So, yeah. Planning is mostly for you. Now, the other thing when you're doing assignments, and this comes back to that first question, who is this for and who's going to see it? When you're an animation mentor, for example, the other part of planning is not just notes for yourself, it's to show your mentor that you are paying attention and that you are studying things. So you are putting all of these ideas to show your mentor, yes, see, I am analyzing my reference, I have studied my timing, I am taking notes, I am understanding. If you don't show that, your mentor has no way of knowing whether you actually paid attention to your reference or not. So I always approached it in that sense. When I was a student, it's like, I'm going to prove to my mentor that, look, I paid attention to my reference. I might have gotten it wrong and my reference might suck, but I paid attention to it and I can make changes. So that's the way I approached it. I wanted to show that I was thinking through all of this stuff. So, let's see. With that, that's the planning phase. After that, you're pretty much done. From there, I would do one final round of brainstorming. And this, honestly, I would do the brainstorming all throughout. And the brainstorming just comes with doing that exploration pass. Once you've shot the reference, try exploring new poses. Think of how you could push the line of action, how you can make things stronger and better. Doing variations. So that was kind of this here where the first pass here was okay. But then with my mentor's help, I made this variation. It's the same idea, but it's slightly different and it was more dynamic. And you can do that at any point yourself. You don't have to wait for your mentor to say, do a variation. Whenever you have an idea, try coming up with like slight variations of it and see if any one just kind of seems a little stronger than the other. Maybe the original was the best, but you never know when something might just be like, oh yeah, that's just way better. Don't be glued to any one idea either. If the idea isn't super strong, it's okay to change it. That happens all the time in the industry. It happens halfway through a movie. They're going to switch the whole ending and you have to reanimate the whole ending. That happens. The goal here is to make the strongest shot we possibly can. And if part of that involves redoing a section, that's fine. And then the biggest thing, and this kind of goes for every single phase here, is share your ideas and don't work in a bubble. Don't do this all alone, especially if you're an animation mentor. You've got a campus full of people who are going through the same thing you are. You've got a class full of people who are doing the exact same assignments you're doing right now. Share with them. Ask them for feedback. Give feedback. Do a little brainstorming. Just create study groups. All of that good stuff. That's what's going to help you make your ideas even stronger than if you were to just do it on your own. You need to push your shots to that next level. And to do that, you need that input from other people because they will have a totally different view compared to you you've thought of this from the very basic concept to now this finalized concept. We are skewed in our viewing of this. We've seen it 100 times already. Show it to someone new, see what their reaction to it is. And that's going to help a lot. So, yeah. So, with all of that, that's basically coming up with an idea. It's a big process. Ideas are not simple. I didn't do all of this here and this whole talk to kind of show, see, it's so easy. All you have to do is follow these 3-4 steps and see, you'll be able to come up with any idea at all. No, ideas are hard. Ideas are tricky. It is very, very tricky. It's still one of the things that I struggle with a lot to this day, is coming up with a solid idea that's as good as it can be and the most dynamic it can be. The goal of this is to show different ways you can approach it, and that it takes not only time, but it takes asking questions. That's the big thing, is you need to ask questions about your shots. You need to ask questions about what you want. What does the audience need to see? What does the character have to go through? What does your mentor want? What are the limitations? What are the goals? It's all questions. And the more you can answer those questions, the more you can dive down into the heart of what you're trying to animate. That's when you're going to have a much stronger shot. If you're just going, I'm going to have a character, let's say, put a star on a tree, like I was showing just a second ago. That core idea, is done. There you go. That's it. That's the core idea. It's boring. Almost any idea is boring if you think of it just in a super core concept. What makes it interesting is the little things. And that's how you're going to get an interesting idea. Is you can have a boring concept. The character is just going to sit here. Sit in a chair and be bored. Well, that could be fun. There's a character. Is that interesting? Not really. But what if they're fidgety? The character's just sitting in the chair and and they're like playing around. Just kind of looking around. Maybe you have and maybe that swing is like and they're just like waiting in their chair. And now you're making the character a little bit more dynamic, even though the base motion is the same. But maybe we don't want the character to move around that much. So maybe they're just sitting there. And you just do little things like that. The body's not moving much, but now you're using the face to kind of sell more dynamic thought process and make some subtext. What are they thinking in their head? Anytime now, anytime. I'm really thirsty. Why is it taking so long? You don't have to have that dialogue in there, but you have that inner monologue, and it kind of influences some of the things you do. So you can take a boring concept and make it interesting by doing this. And if you don't do this exploration of your idea and asking questions and diving deeper, you will have, regardless if you have the best idea, best shot concept ever, it's going to end up being boring because it's really just a rig moving, and that's not fun to look at. So I hope that helps. And if anyone has questions on that, definitely let me know. I know it wasn't the most interesting visual demo because I was just writing and stuff. I had hoped to do a little bit more of a dynamic demo, but I kind of ran out of time, and I wanted to get this done for week 1 of the term because a lot of you are planning your shots now. This is not going to be helpful next week when none of you are planning your shots anymore. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it was somewhat interesting. And the big thing is, don't feel bad that you have trouble coming up with ideas. It's very hard. It really is. Even the most creative person will have trouble coming up with ideas at times. As long as you start from a non-blank page, give yourself something to work on, that really, really helps. At least for me, it's night and day. If I have to come up with an idea, just sometimes someone will ask me, oh, just animate something, just do this. And it's oh, okay, sure. And it's so hard to just come up with an idea. If I have that time to create that sheet of ideas and underline them and just pick and choose, you saw how many ideas we came up with, and were they good? Not really. But they're ideas that we can build off of and then take those and Frankenstein them into something new. So